We'd like to start out by thanking our valuable sponsors. Sense of Satisfaction by Cricket is the place for all your fragrance needs. Plus, she's got products to heal what ails your skin and your hair. Shop at scentsbycricket.com. Special thanks to our valued sponsor, John Travis, a financial coach and certified Kingdom advisor with Richard Young Associates, a registered investment advisor. Thanks goes to Anna Patterson, my sister in the Lord who faithfully gives to this ministry every month. And to our newest sponsor, LaToya Gerard of Preach the Word Worldwide Network. She is a valued sponsor and a major encourager regarding this ministry. We need and would love to have you as a sponsor. Absolutely no gift is too small. Please note the info regarding giving throughout and at the end of the show, and help us spread these testimonies around the world. Please note that the views and opinions expressed on this show are not necessarily the viewpoints of our sponsors. It's time to hear the story, make the connection, learn the lesson, and gain the wisdom. Are you ready? Let's get charged and be changed. The Sister Speak Brother Break Show. Conversations on grace, healing, and deliverance. This is Marcy Bush. Come on, let's journey together.
So my first job out of college was working in corporate communications at Walmart headquarters. So I had to move all the way to Bentonville, Arkansas. But again, at the time, I had other people that couldn't hardly find a job. So I felt like I didn't have the luxury to turn down this job. And it was obviously paying way more than the TV station because I was finally like working there on the weekend, but it was peanuts. I mean, I love doing it. And I definitely believe I would have made a different decision if finances weren't an issue. I enjoyed being a weekend reporter and working for the news station, but it didn't pay anything. This job at Walmart, it was a decent full-time job. It had benefits and all of that. So what am I going to choose? I'm going to choose the one that's going to pay the bills. And even though I had to move away, and I didn't have. Oh, go ahead.
Let me ask you. So did it feel like? How did you have the courage to go on and even apply for it? Was there any like, girl, what I'm doing? Or was it like, I can get this? What was that like to even apply for a job at corporate?
It was crazy. I thought I had a little bit of an advantage because I was already working for the company. And I think there was some kind of internal job posting. Like back then, computers weren't a big thing. I did do my work on a computer. So maybe there was some kind of place that I could go to look at open positions. So I figured, I might as well apply. What's it going to hurt? And I do remember this was kind of odd, but I had never flown before. And
Okay.
Walmart flew a plane out to get me to go interview, which is so odd. It was this little Walmart. It was so weird. So Walmart is a huge company. Walmart, I believe they still do today. They had their own aviation department. So having a plane and picking me up wasn't as big a deal as I was initially thinking. But it's kind of interesting. They were so big where they had their own aviation department. And so they had their own planes. They didn't use commercial. So I went and interviewed and I had a great experience interviewing. Now, Bentonville, Arkansas was in the middle of nowhere. It's since grown like crazy, but I visited, I ended up getting the job, and now I had to figure out how am I going to move? I barely have any money, who in the heck is going to help me? This is 14 hours away from where I live. And again, I think by then I had started living with my brother again, and he was like the only help that I got. But Walmart, when you got a job there and they moved you, they give you a yellow Ryder truck and they will reimburse you for your meals and your hotel. And that's all you got.
Okay.
So I went and got the yellow Ryder truck, brought it to my brother's house. And this is a big truck, Marcy. I'm barely used to driving my car. So I didn't have anyone to go with me. So I'm going by myself. Other people, they might have mom, dad, the whole family planning a whole big trip. No, I didn't have that. The best I had was my brother. He guided me how to back up the truck leaving that day. And I can remember it was raining just a little bit that day because tears was coming down my eyes. He helped me hooked up my car on the back. It was a Ford Probe. And here I am driving this big, huge truck. I'm scared to death. I got the car hooked on the back. He's guiding me out as it's raining, and I'm on my way for this 14-hour trip. Don't know nobody.
Right.
Um, didn't even have an apartment or anything. So I had to find an apartment. Turns out I had to pay utilities in advance. I barely had any money. So it was so hard. It was one of the hardest things I had done in my life. And
Yeah.
even today, I reflect on that point in my life as one of the hardest things I've had to do, thinking if I could do that, I can do almost anything
Right.
based on where I was in my life at that point. That was a hard thing, but I needed the job. So, I did it. I broke it up into 2 days. And I just remember when I stayed at a hotel halfway in between, I remember I pulled in the parking lot, like almost making a circle because I'm like, there's no way I'm trying to back this thing up by
Okay.
myself.
Right. Right. Oh
So
my.
yeah, so that was my first real job out of college.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're in Arkansas, you're doing the thing. What comes next? How long were you at that position? What was life like in Arkansas?
Yeah, I remember when I first started. So that little city in Bentonville, it pretty much was owned by Walmart. Like everybody you knew, it was kind of like Savannah Riverside.
Yeah.
Everybody that you knew either worked there or had a family member that worked there or had some kind of connection to Walmart headquarters. They had like, I think it was 8,000 people at the time between their distribution centers. I mean, it was just a Walmart city. Okay. So when I got there, in my department, I didn't feel super welcome. I just felt like I was just dumber than everybody else. I felt like I didn't really know my job like I should. No one was really taking me under their wing and trying. I mean, I'm the type of person where I'm waving you in and I love to mentor people. I love to show you around, help you out, and all of that. I didn't feel that type of welcome. And
Mm.
this was probably the first 2 or 3 weeks. And I just remember I would go in, they have this big lunchroom. I would go in there and just, eat by myself or whatever, because I just didn't know anybody. And there was no diversity. Like you can count the number of Black people on your hand, probably
Oh,
on one hand, no diversity. So I just remember there was a girl that came up to me. It was hard to tell what she was, maybe Asian, maybe Hawaiian, maybe, I didn't know, but she was super friendly to me. Just
okay.
like, hey, you must be new. And I'm like, yeah. She said, oh, you want to eat lunch together? So there was that friend, and her name was Supa, and she is Thai and Indian mixed. And
Okay.
we ended up becoming the closest of friends. We spent all of our time together. We roomed together for a little while, and our
Okay.
lives kind of paralleled. We got married around the same time, had kids around the same time, got divorced around the same time. But 30 something years later, she is still my best friend.
Wow.
And we've never lived in the same city together, but we vacation together, we do things together, we supported each other. So that meant the world. And I always tell her, I'm like, yeah, you were like an oasis, when I finally saw someone that was like nice to me and friendly. And I'm like, I just grabbed onto your leg and I wouldn't let you go because I felt so alone 14 hours away. And I
Yeah.
just remember we didn't have cell phones and all of that. Like now our cars are like entertainment vehicles
Right.
on wheels. And
Um,
even if I got a 3-day weekend, I would drive all the way from Arkansas to Augusta because I didn't know anybody early on. And I'm like, what am I gonna do? Just hang out here? So
oh,
so yeah. So
shoot, the
so that
whole
was a
day was on the road, right?
oh, absolutely it was. Absolutely. So and I think back, we're young, we got all this energy. I never even thought twice about it. But now, 14 hours, I'm like, heck no.
Okay.
I wouldn't be doing that today. But
Right.
yeah, so when I was there, I loved working at Walmart, and things did get better as things went on. But you know how you feel when you're in a new place and
Yeah.
all of that. So I enjoyed working at Walmart, but the lack of diversity there was starting to get on me. I just remember, back in the day, people wore fashion for makeup. And I remember I would go to the closest, biggest city, which was Fayetteville, Arkansas. That's where the basketball team was. They had a great basketball team. And
Mhm.
they didn't even have my makeup, and they would have to order it. It
Okay.
was just that little
Right.
diverse. So that was a bummer. I did get married while I was in Arkansas. I had met my husband, in Augusta. He was in the military. We ended up
Okay.
getting married there, but he was stationed like in Arizona somewhere, so he wasn't there. And I could have gone to Arizona with him, but again, I had gone through a lot to, get this degree and start my career, and he wasn't looking to stay in long term. So we made the decision for me to continue my career and for him to finish out in the military, and then we went from there, which is how I ended up in Ohio. But
Okay.
so my experience at Walmart headquarters is great because they're obviously one of the largest companies in the world. It's a great organization. A lot of my corporate values and things that I have learned and how I am as a professional was ingrained in me from people like Mr. Sam, who started Walmart. And so that was a good first career to have worked at the headquarters to really embrace the culture. And I feel like, right after I ended up just transferring to a store, I feel like being out in the stores, I definitely didn't like as much, and it was just completely different. But the headquarters, the culture, and the environment was very nurturing to the very early days of my career.
Okay. So, where did you go? You said you got married.
Yeah, I
Um,
did.
how many years in did you have your daughter?
Okay, so when my husband got out of the military, we were focusing on his career, and he got a job in Ohio. And so we moved there. As soon as I moved to Ohio, I discovered I was pregnant.
Okay. Yeah.
So shortly, about a year or so after we were married, I was pregnant with her. Now I decided to keep things easy because Walmart was such a large organization. I just transferred from headquarters to a store, and my best friend, she happened to be in HR, so she hooked me up with that. And,
Okay.
and so I'm learning about connections and stuff. I wish I would have learned a lot of things sooner because when I
Right.
was at Walmart headquarters, I was in corporate communications, and so we had our own TV studio. And
Mm.
so the executives, everybody from at the time it was David Glass, it was Rob Walton, who was Sam Walton's son. So I had exposure to all these high level executives, and to me, I was just doing my job. I wish I would have had a lot more conversation with them and maybe kept in touch with a lot more people, but I ended up moving, to just a different store because at least I still stayed with the same company, and
Right.
I didn't have to worry about my job. So that's how I ended up in Ohio. Had my daughter about a year later, and so that's her home. She was born in Ohio, so she never really spent a whole lot of time in the South, and she probably doesn't have the same affinity for South Carolina and Georgia like I do. But
Right.
yeah, she came shortly. So that was in the mid 90s.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And tell us about, because well, let me ask you, are there any things that you remember that you care to share or that seem I guess instrumental to where you were going, as far as once you made it to Ohio, here you are in another new place. You do have your hubby, but in another new place, new faces, new what was that like? Was it an easier transition because you did have your own family unit there?
Yeah, I think it definitely was a different transition because I had, it was my husband and it was my daughter, and yeah, I had my own family unit. So that was a time where you're a new mom, so you're going through a lot of emotions there, and she was my first child, so I got the 1-800 nurse line on speed dial. So a lot of the focus was on her and
Mhm.
raising our child. I was still in retail at the time, and retail is a hard grind. And I
Mm.
was a manager, so I just remember like right around the holidays, that's where Walmart has their busiest season. So I
Mhm.
remember not being able to spend a lot of time with her
Yeah.
because I was working, and not to mention Black Friday. It's like basically you get no sleep. Back then, Black Friday was big,
Mhm.
and the stores open at like 5 a.m. in the morning. So you're
Mhm.
there at like 4 a.m. and you've got
Wow.
things back then. The things that were a big deal was holiday Barbies, Nintendo Game Boys. I remember there was a girl in electronics department, and that was the hot thing. And I remember the store had opened, and she was just opening a box of Nintendo Game Boys, and everyone was just rushing her. And finally, she just started throwing them up in the air. So it was frenzy like that. Black Friday used
Yeah.
to be crazy. It's not
Yeah.
like it is now where you could do everything online. So,
Wow.
so I was with Walmart for maybe a couple more years. I just couldn't even do it anymore. Your salary was based on 50 hours a week minimum, and that got crazy. So I ended up moving to another retailer, Macy's. It was called something else, and then Macy's acquired them. That was a little bit better. And then I finally got a retail altogether, and that's when I ended up with a company that was headquartered in Dayton, Ohio, called LexisNexis, and I spent the next 20 years with them in Ohio.
Okay. So did you, at what point did you feel like you were no longer like just bobbing your head up from underwater, even when I guess it comes to financial things and not just trying to make it like, because you say you came from poverty. And so then to, at what point did you realize, hey, there's another world out here and I'm not, taking this water in?
Yeah, so during the time that I was married, having my daughter, we were both working full time. So we had a pretty decent life. Like he pretty much came from poverty as well, so it wasn't like, he had a ton of money, but we both had good steady jobs. And in my mind, I kept this reoccurring thought and feeling that I never wanted to be in poverty again. Like that was a big part of my motivation because I knew what poverty looked like. I never wanted my daughter to know that. I wanted to give her a better life than I had, just like my dad wanted for me. And
Right.
so almost everything from then on out, I just didn't want that nagging feeling of being in poverty to ever come to reality. So the big, turning point or the big wake up call I got was after I was married for about 12 years, I ended up getting a divorce. And
Okay.
divorce is very hard. It's stressful. It tests your emotion. It tests your psychology, your confidence, your finances,
Right.
everything. So
Mm.
if anyone's been divorced, know anyone that's been divorced, it is hard. And it can drop a bomb on your finances. And
Yes.
that was a moment where I was scared again, hoping that this divorce was not going to put me back in poverty. And
Mm.
it was a really, really stressful time in my life. And I
Mhm.
wondered, what am I going to do? How am I going to make sure my daughter's okay, that my life is okay, where I'm never in poverty again? So that
Mhm.
struck a lot of fear in me
Yeah.
to start to think about, okay, how do I learn about my finances?
Mhm.
How do I figure some of this stuff out? And
Mhm.
so that is when I realized, hey, I kind of like, learning about the financial stuff. It made me feel more empowered. It gave me a little more confidence. It's one less thing to worry about, but I always saw it as this big, complicated thing that I wasn't taught. So I'm just always like gonna be in this place where I just don't know and I'm gonna never be able to really, get ahead like I want to. So as
Mhm.
I'm digging into things, one of the big glaring mistakes that I made was like when you get a divorce, you kind of, especially if you've been married for at least 10 years, basically you take, all the money that you have, the assets that you have, you put it in one big pot, you split it down the middle. And
Mhm.
so pretty much the biggest assets we had at the time, because there was hardly any equity in the home that we had, but we had the retirement accounts. And I had $20,000. So at this point, I'm in my mid 30s. Okay. $20,000, just a tip. It's not a whole lot in your 30s. You should probably have more than that. But again, I had no idea how much I should have, right? I was doing the company match like, most people do, and that was it. So I had about 20,000. And then my husband, when I looked at his, he had $120,000. So he had $100,000 more. Now I went back and I sort of did this forensic flashback on the finances. And men and women do tend to invest different. Men have a tendency to invest a little bit more aggressively.
Mhm.
He worked for a very large bank, which at the time, this was like, 2004, 2005, 2006, where bank stocks were some of the best asset classes, best performing. So that was helping giving him a lift. He was starting to make more than me. We know the wage gap, the
Mhm.
not only the racial wage gap, but the gender wage gap. So
Right.
he's
Right.
escalating a bit more than me. But we started out very similarly in the salaries that we made. We had a similar match. So it wasn't a big disparity like I was a teacher and he was a doctor. No, we were both
Right.
working, these average jobs. So that hit me in the gut. It's like, how did I not know this? How on earth could he have more? But just these little tweaks over 12 years, they add up. You
Mhm.
know, I like to talk about compound growth. Well, this compounded over time. And
Right.
this disparity in what I had and what he had became bigger and bigger. Now it was equalized, during the divorce because whatever I wasn't saving in my retirement, it was coming into the house to pay the bills.
Right.
And, when we got together, we both had nothing. So everything was in one pot, it wasn't separated. So, everything got equalized when we got divorced. But I promised myself and my daughter that from then on out, I never wanted to be that financially ignorant again. I wanted to figure out this money thing. I wanted to better understand my finances. I was particularly interested in investing. That seems to be the funner part for most people. That was funner for me. So that was probably not the best starting point. But I
Mhm.
always say start with the piece that interests you the most because you're going to stick with it. So I
Right.
then, once I learned, a lot of the investing stuff, I ended up joining an investment club and I was just fascinated. All these people knew more than me. Then I backtracked, looking at things like the budget, an emergency fund, starting to max out my retirement accounts, not just do the company match. Because I had the means to do that. I just didn't know the right order. I didn't know how much should I be investing. So I started answering a lot of those questions myself, but a lot of the people in the investment club, they were resources that I could ask. I started having friends where I would start asking them things, and I just got better and better. And that just changed my world. And as I'm learning all this stuff, I'm, of course, wanting to share that with my daughter. And at this point, she's a teenager. So
Mhm.
she's not listening, that much to me. But this is a big learning spurt in my life. And
Mhm.
we all have those happen. If you have curiosity about something, it's like act on that curiosity, start digging. And I'm
Mhm.
just so much wiser for it. And that started my a big part of my interest in the personal finance stuff and the financial education because I didn't just want it for myself. Once I got it, I got it. I wanted to share it with everyone else because I kept thinking, Marcy, about the community that I came from. I'm like, there's a lot of people like me. And when I say people like me, I would say grew up in lower to middle class or in poverty
Mhm.
that didn't really get taught much about finance. I mean, our grandmas and our aunts and uncles, they taught us some general things like live on less than you earn, always save something. So I want to give them credit
Right.
and show them some love
Mhm.
for teaching us that.
Right.
Some people think that that's something new, but we had people in life that did teach us those high level things. But when it
Mhm.
came down to the actual act of doing it, like opening the investment account, things were changing too. Pensions were gone away. So how do you actually execute on it?
Right.
And so I'm thinking about there's so many people that I know are super smart that I
Mhm.
went to school with that are
Mhm.
just as smart as me, but they
Mhm.
wasn't exposed to certain things with financial stuff like me, and if they just get a little bit of like fill in the gaps, they're going to be just fine, just like me. I never saw myself as anything that unique. There's a whole community of people that I know that are like in the same place that I
Right.
started, and that they would be okay if there was just these few gaps that were filled.
Right. Look, I want to be very vulnerable and transparent right now to say, even now, I do not have the knowledge. I will say there was someone, I was praying about it a few years ago. Just like, Lord, I know this is not it. I know there's something. And there was a young man who I actually hope to have on soon, who he knew, and it's a Caucasian man who is from our area, who said, like, he saw the disparities and he knew both blacks and whites, they worked hard, but the difference was investing. that
Mm,
that there was a lack of knowledge in that area, and so he's still doing in the community. He started, he gathered some people, he rallied some people who he knew did have um connections, who were African American, who could rally some people together and give him the opportunity to present. And so through that, I have opened an investment account or whatever, but I'm going to still be honest and say, and especially now that I'm self-employed, girl. So it's like, sure, I got to pay the bills. I can't afford to invest every month, but in all actuality, I can't afford not to. And so
Right.
even with you talking, and then even if it's the smallest amount, knowing that it's so different from putting it in a savings account in a regular bank. But again, we don't have that knowledge or know-how. And the thing, I say we don't. Here's the thing, because sometimes we tend to be so private or so proud, I don't know which one it is,
Right.
that there could be someone who we're actually elbow buddies with. Somebody that you love on
Right.
and you talk, but there's that tendency not to say, yo, talk to me, because tell me what happens. And I know we never know what's in the next person's bank account, but at the
Right.
same time, there are certain things that are indicators at times that sister got it going on, or they have something going on. When you see them consistently, they're adding to their house, or they're doing the vacations, or they have the cars. I know that's not always it. You may overhear a conversation, you may know where they work, but you don't cross the line to say, oh, I could use some help. Can you point me? Or, like I say, make the sacrifice to say, I need it at the very least, I could chop a meal out a week or a month and put that money somewhere. And so, again, this is a conversation that has not been had on this platform, but that I think is really necessary.
Thanks so much for joining us today. If you've been blessed by today's show, feel free to let us know. And if you'd like to sow into this ministry, become a sponsor, or contact us, you can reach us at 803-221-0169, or you can email us at the ssbbshow@gmail.com. Let's continue this journey together. We need and would love to have you as a sponsor. Absolutely no gift is too small. Please note the info regarding giving and help us spread these testimonies around the world.